Dear students, welcome to CCR Module 1, Overview of Clinical Research and Regulatory Guidelines. I am Dr. Vasifa from ICRI Delhi, so I'll be talking about the module. So let's begin. The learning objectives of the module will be that we will be discussing about the overview of clinical research, types of clinical research, various phases of clinical trials, drug development process, basic idea about the guidelines, various professional skills which are needed for pursuing clinical research, opportunities and needs of clinical research, and we'll also talk about some of the important terminologies used in clinical trial. So this module will give you an understanding about the overview process of clinical trials and the various important points and the highlights of the field. So first of all, let's begin the module with the basic, which is what is clinical research. So students, I am sure that all of you might be having some kind of familiarity with the clinical research. So let's start with the formal definition of clinical research. So a clinical research is a multidisciplinary approach, okay, and it is an applied research. So then what is the purpose of research? The purpose of research is basically to evaluate whether a medication is safe and effective and when it is used for disease under question, which means then that when we have to conduct any clinical trial, we are actually doing research. So clinical trials tell us what is the appropriate dose and the route of administration of many medicines. The initial testing of a clinical trial is carried out on healthy volunteers to understand the safety profile of a medication and how does body handles the drug. And then we have the subsequent phases of clinical trials, which are phase 2 and phase 3, which are actually carried out on patients who are suffering from diseases to understand the efficacy, whether it really works, and also about the safety of a medication. So you can see in this slide that there are various stakeholders who are a part of clinical research. So we have a sponsor companies, they are the pharmaceutical companies, investigator. Investigator is a person who is medically qualified to conduct clinical trial. So we have ethics committees also. So they are responsible for granting approval to clinical research. Also we have the role of regulatory authorities for conducting clinical trials. So types of clinical research. Clinical research can be of various types, like we have some research which is investigator initiated, which means that it is started by an investigator who actually has an idea to conduct the trial. The research can also be conducted by any federal agencies, NIH, National Institute of Health, contract research, which can be the big and small pharmaceutical companies, and also the medical device companies. Even we can have a collaborative research also with the other institutions. So research can also be initiated by a sponsor company, which is basically a pharmaceutical company where they can conduct the research on the drugs, devices. So device can be any kind of a medical device like cardiac stents, pacemaker, biological products, which can be a vaccine. So all the type of researches are basically conducted under the well-structured protocol. So protocol is basically the set of instructions given for conducting clinical trials. So clinical trials are of various phases, which is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4. And Trials are conducted by professionals who are expert in conducting tests and carrying out the evaluations. So now coming to phases of clinical trials. So in the slide you can see there are 4 phases which I have already mentioned. So in the slide it is also mentioned about the objective of each type of the trial. Like we have a phase 1 trial which is done to evaluate safety, efficacy, dosage and the side effect. Phase 2 trial, it is conducted on patients. It is done to test the effectiveness of a medicine and also to evaluate the further safety of the medication. Then moving to phase 3 clinical trial, which actually confirms the effectiveness of a medication, which means the medication which the patient is consuming, is it really effective or not. And also it helps in monitoring the side effects of the medicines and also helps in comparing the treatment with the other type of treatment. So we can collect the information from different phases of clinical trial and ultimately we reach to a phase 4 clinical trial which actually provides additional information regarding the risk and benefits of the medication and also related to the use of medicines. So right from preclinical testing, so we have the testing which is done on the animals, which is called as laboratory testing, research protocol, animal testing, dose finding, which is the assessment of drug therapy, proof of concept, which is testing of the beneficial effect of medicine, undesirable effects, comparative efficacy, which is conducted in multiple locations throughout the world. And we also carry out the final analysis of the research study, like we carry out biostatistical analysis to determine compelling and statistically significant results. We also have the follow-up of the patient, in which we are trying and understanding whether the new therapy which is given to the patient is safe and effective. Then we move to the continuing testing, where the drug is continuously tested for efficacy and safety through different kinds of studies, which can be the register studies and the pharmacoepidemiology studies. So, dear students, in clinical trials, we actually follow different kind of regulations and the guidelines. So, the different regulations and guidelines in clinical trials which are important include the Drug and Cosmetic Act, Schedule Y, Indian GCP guideline, clinical trial permission, import license, export license, BAB guidelines, ICMR guideline, which is Indian Council of Medical Research for Medical Research and Ethics, ICH GCP guideline. ICH is International Council of Harmonization Good Clinical Practices, US FDA, which is United States Food and Drug Administration, and EU, which is European Union directives. So, let's now see how the scenario has changed in clinical research then and now. So, clinical research is relatively a newer business and profession in India. So, during the previous decade, there was not even a single contract research organization existed in India. So, the pharmaceutical companies who were doing clinical trials managed regulatory work on their own, and they used to run clinical trial on their shoulders. Okay, so that means that we did not had that much of awareness on how to conduct trials and how to carry out research. So only a handful of senior doctors, represented investigators, participated in a global multi-centric study. So now what is this global multicentric study? So global multicentric study is a type of study which is conducted at many places throughout the world. But now the scenario has changed. Today at least there are 10 different types of clinical research players who provide career opportunities to prospective CR professionals. So these players are involved in various types of CR business, which you can see, like we have bioavailability management. Bioavailability management units conduct the phase 1. We have site management, which is responsible for providing support to clinical trial sites. Bioequivalence studies. We have phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 trial monitorings. Data management, which is the part and the parcel of clinical trials. Central laboratories. Biotechnology, chemistry and biology. Biology, IT solutions and CR training. So now some of the important facts and figures, like India has roughly produced 300 GCP trained investigators and approximately 600 trained CR professionals who are successfully handling several global multicentric clinical trials. So, the clinical trial industry or the Indian market of CR is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So now this is a very relevant question since you people are pursuing the certificate course in clinical research. So why we have to choose clinical research? So the answer for that question is that clinical research industry is a sunrise industry and a booming market. It has got a huge demand and supply, easy entry for the professionals, white collar job, intensive job vis-a-vis better than sales, marketing, production jobs. It has got good career prospects, quick money, national and international travel, cross-cultural exposure, increased contacts, marketability, better understanding of drugs, diseases and management, and research and documentation is really interesting to carry out. So as we can see in this slide, the number of global trials in India and the percentage of clinical trials in India is increasing with time. So the number of global trial and the percentage of clinical trials in India are increasing every year. So now coming to a slide that what are the different types of areas in which clinical trials are done. So clinical trials are done in different areas and branches like psychiatry, cardiology, endocrinology, gastroenterology, orthopedics, ophthalmology, pediatrics, respiratory medicine, dermatology, hematology, infection or infectious diseases, and oncology. Like oncology, as we all know, it is the study of cancer. Hematology is the study of blood. Dermatology is the study of skin-related conditions. In the pediatric diseases, we talk about the diseases and disorders related with the children. Ophthalmology is basically eye-related diseases. Gastroenterology, it includes the diseases and disorders of stomach. In endocrinology, we are basically studying about the diseases of the endocrine gland like pituitary gland, parathyroid gland, adrenal gland. Cardiology, in cardiology we are dealing with the cardiac diseases like ischemic heart diseases, myocardial infarction, coronary artery diseases, arteriosclerosis, atherosclerosis. And also we have a psychiatry discipline in which we are actually talking about various brain-related diseases and disorders, which can include depression, mania, schizophrenia, hallucinations. So the demand-supply gap in clinical trials is actually increasing. So you can see the number of site staff, investigator, CRO staff, and the sponsor staff. So now coming to the clinical research career pathway. So you can see the students can get opportunity in the mentioned areas like pharma companies, which include major pharmaceutical companies, contract research organizations, BABE centers, which are bioavailability, bioequivalence centers, site management organizations. They provide support for conducting trials. Data management companies, they help in managing the data, because in trials actually we have a lot of data, so we have to manage the data. We have to store the data in the softwares. IT companies in healthcare, EDC service providers, which are electronic data capture, central laboratories, packaging, labeling and contract manufacturers, investigator and site staff, and training centers. So, function and career pathway. So, in clinical research, as I already mentioned, there are various scenarios and various places where a person can get absorbed after getting a degree or a diploma in CR. Person can work as a quality assurance person in a CRO, which is contract research organization, SMO, which is site management organization, sponsor companies, pharmacovigilance organization, data management companies, and in the drug controller general. So, career in CROs, pharma and biotech companies. This slide highlights about the opportunities and avenues in clinical trials or clinical research. So, a person can start his career as a clinical trial assistant, clinical research associate, senior CRA, clinical team leader, project manager, senior project manager, manager medical and regulatory affairs, manager safety, manager quality assurance, medical director, associate director, associate director projects, director business development, director head clinical operations, CEO, which is the chief executive officer, president. Also in phase 1, phase 2, conduct of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4 trial, project management, drug development and planning, monitorings, source data verification, safety reporting, regulatory approval, QA audit, which is a quality assurance audit, and even in business development. So, career in site management organization as a clinical research coordinator, principal investigator. So, principal investigator is a leader of research team, co-investigator, medical monitor, project manager, manager medical and regulatory affairs, manager quality assurance, so is responsible for managing the quality, manager business development, director, associate director projects, director head clinical operations, general manager, CEO or a president. So now coming to various career opportunities in data management. So data management is a very vast field in clinical research, and you can see the various positions or the openings in the data management field, which includes data entry operator, data validation executive, QA executive, data manager, statistical programmer, data reviewer, database designer, medical writer, and head data management. So now, what are the key organizations which actually work in or who are playing an active role in the conduct of clinical trials. So you can see companies into clinical research or the sponsor companies. Few of the sponsor companies include Johnson & Johnson, Biocon, GlaxoSmithKline, AstraZeneca, Nicholas, Piramal, Dr. Reddy's, Novo Nordisk, Pfizer. So these are just the name of few companies. Similarly, some of the few CROs include Quintiles, Icon International, Clinigen, Accenture, Paraxel, Asian Clinical Trials, and hospitals. So nowadays every hospital is conducting clinical trials in almost every city of our country. Few of the hospitals I have mentioned in this slide, like St. John's, MS Ramaiah Institute of Oncology, Wockhardt Hospital, and Apollo Hospitals. Some of the key cities in India for conduct of clinical research includes Delhi NCR, Mumbai, Pune, Ahmedabad, Vadodara, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Chennai. And there are also some new cities like Chandigarh, Bhopal, Indore. They are the emerging new centers for clinical trials. So now students, this slide is very important because it tells you that what kind of knowledge you need to have when you are in clinical research. So basically, we should be aware about the drug development process, which you will be studying in the coming modules: clinical trial designs, statistics, adverse events, toxicology. So toxicology is the study of the toxins, regulatory and the ethics. Also idea about GCP, which is good clinical practices, GMP, good manufacturing practices, GLP is good laboratory practices, pharmacy, pharmacokinetics and pharmacology, also including the knowledge about the disease diagnosis, drugs, information technology and computing skills. So this is just an overview of the salary package which the students can get, because we are also offering the placement assistant to the student. But let me tell you, the salary is no bar for a right candidate. So the role of training. So role of training is very important in research. So every player in clinical research is expected to be a professional and a committed manager. So training in clinical research to a great extent helps to build up most of the qualities and develop an insight into the field. However, it always depends upon the quality and methodology of training and trainer's experience in the field. So a good training which we will be providing you at ICRI will ensure that at the end of your course, the student is able to take up the responsibility in the industry without further training by the employer where he would be eventually placed. Hence, it is not sufficient to have an ambition to do a course in clinical research, but also to choose the right institution, and you have already made a choice by choosing ICRI. So an overview of what kind of exposure you will get in the course. Like, we will be providing you the classroom professional educational programs, online and distance learning, corporate trainings. So there will be some module in which you will get groomed of the corporate skills, e-learning solutions, consulting services, medical and scientific writing. So there is a separate module for these technologies. So now coming to opportunities in clinical research. So the question is, are there really good number of jobs to all clinical research students who are passing out of the course? Answer is yes, there are jobs available, but one must be able to move out of the town for a prospective career. Means we should not keep any inhibitions in order to become successful. Secondly, students must be able to come up with the high expectation of the employers So a mere degree in clinical research will not suffice. It means you really need to have the knowledge and skills so that a company or an organization will hire you. So there has to be an active support by the student in understanding the subject and also improve his soft skills. So soft skills even includes the communication skills. So currently what we are seeing a paradigm shift in the way we conduct research or clinical trials. So this is relatively the newer concept which is coming up, includes the virtual visits, remote monitoring, which is very challenging new environment for the researchers. So in the virtual visits, we basically conduct patients' visits virtually, which means no face-to-face contact. And remote monitoring, it is a type of monitoring in which we are checking the patient data remotely. So, examples of virtual trials or virtual research includes e-consent, which is electronic consent, remote monitoring, providing IP, which is medication to the patients at their homes, also like arranging meetings in the comfort level of the patients, taking safety precautions, and also following social distancing. So nowadays clinical research is even taking the help of the technology, which means we are incorporating technology in electronic consents, electronic regulatory binders, telehealth or telemedicine, AI based monitoring, which is artificial intelligence based monitoring. So a career in clinical research is definitely challenging and satisfying. However, the success is ensured only when one chooses the right course from the right institution. So now, students, coming to some of the common terminologies used in clinical trials. So in that we have the first term, which is good clinical practices. So how do we define good clinical practices? So good clinical practices is an international ethical scientific quality standard to which all research involving human participants is conducted by ensuring right, safety and confidentiality of participants in the research. So they should be respected and protected. Audit. Audit is defined as a systemic and an independent examination of a trial related activities and documents to determine whether the trial related activities were conducted properly, recorded, analyzed, accurately reported, according to protocol, which is a set of written instructions, sponsors SOP, they are the standard operating procedures, and the good clinical practices. Protocol. This is also other important terminology. So protocol is a document which describes how the clinical trial will be conducted. So it includes the objective, design, methodology, statistical considerations and organization of a clinical trial, and it ensures the safety of clinical trial subjects and integrity of data collected. Case record form. So this is a very essential document of clinical trial. So it is designed in accordance with the protocol to record data and other information on the trial subjects. So the CRF should be in a format which should allow the accurate input, presentation and verification, audit and inspection of recorded data. So CRFs can either be in the form of a paper format or in the form of an electronic format. So both the formats should be acceptable under Indian Good Clinical Practice guidelines. Sponsor. So sponsor is an individual or a company or an institution which takes responsibility for initiation, management, financing of clinical trial. So sponsor independently initiates a clinical trial and takes a full responsibility of trial conduction. Investigator. So, investigator in research is a person who is involved in the successful conduct of research. So, the investigator helps in carrying out the research study and also helps in monitoring the safety of the results and analyze the data and report the results of. So, the benefits of the CCR program which you have chosen. In this CCR program, you will get formal structured education from India's premier institute in clinical research, which will help in the fast-track growth, excellent remuneration packages, and the opportunity to work overseas. So, the teaching methodology which will be involved in your modules will include lectures, seminars, regular assignments, role plays, group discussions, case studies, mock projects, quiz, regular assessment, oral and written. So thank you for all your patience and all the best. In case you have any doubts or any queries, you can reach us at any point of